Ever wondered how every killer in Dead by Daylight got their power? How come Nurse can blink and Wraith cloak? How did Artist become a crow? Hey everyone, let's find out today. Trapper got his power simply by creating it. Evan has one of the simpler powers of the realm, with it being bear traps. These traps, as well as his cleaver, are crafted by himself on his family's estate, the Macmillan estate, which contains a mine and an ironworks. It's actually quite possible Evan wasn't the one to make it personally, and may have commissioned his workers to do it for him, which there is noted to be hundreds of. Whilst his cleaver does make explicit mention of it being made by Evan himself, his traps don't say the same, but we can safely assume they are. Hunting was something Evan learnt from time he spent with his father, with him taking Evan out into the woods where he'd give him various lectures and brag about his own strength, and they'd set bear traps. Interestingly, it seems like the entity didn't actually do anything to the traps themselves. They perform like normal bear traps, with the only alteration being how they randomly spawn in the trial grounds. Wraith got his power in a bit more of an interesting way. His power is supernatural after all, and is the ability to ring a bell and become nearly invisible, cloaking and uncloaking. The actual physical bell does seem to be the source of his power too. Originally it was just a bell, functionally. He got it as a gift from his father back in his home country of Nigeria, and it was something they appeared to bond over. Years later, when Philip entered the realm, the entity repurposed the bell in order to provide him with a power. The bell is now said to be imbued with ancient powers. This is presumably the entity's power, and so it likely is powered by emotion, or more specifically, Philip's emotions for it to function. The various add-ons of the bell are also interestingly symbols that are painted directly onto it, which adjust the bell's use. Why invisibility though? Why would that be picked specifically for Wraith by the entity as a power? My theory, or my sort of view on it, is probably because Philip was engaged in violence often against his will. First of all due to the civil war in his home country, and then later on when he unwillingly crushed people under AZHYMOVS' supervision. When he's invisible, he's unable to attack, he can only watch on. So to me this is what it sort of represents. He's this invisible onlooker until he decides to uncloak and take action. Billy has a power that is simply just his chainsaw, but then of course there's the fact he's running at superhuman speeds whilst wielding it. His superhuman speeds appear to be an entity-given gift when using the chainsaw, noted to send its user into a violent frenzy, and noted by Benedict Baker to be superhuman speed. It's possible the chainsaw therefore is an object to channel Billy's rage and anger, allowing him to boost his speed whilst he uses it. The other aspect of this is of course the chainsaw itself, which is an object constructed by Billy himself seemingly. Whilst we don't ever directly get a recounting of this happening, we do get it hinted towards in the perk Tinkerer, which mentions that Billy makes impressive tools out of scraps. Seeing as the chainsaw looks like an original creation, and to be made of scraps, it's pretty safe to assume Billy made it himself out of various scraps he found around Colden Farm. Nurse is one of the most fascinating cases, with her power seeming to have no clear origin from her backstory. She certainly isn't able to blink about before her arrival to the realm. In fact, she doesn't appear to have any unnatural strength, ability, or anything like that at all before the realm. There's also a lot of mystery around why Nurse appears so injured. It's likely down to her ambulance crash before she enters the realm, which leaves her badly injured. This is likely the result of why she looks so different in the realm too, with the entity having to piece her back together. With her now resembling a ghost, her vision seems to be gone, and so it's replaced by the entity with a different kind. She's able to channel the last breath of Crotus Pren Asylum's warden, Patrick Spencer, in order to blink forward and briefly enter the spirit world. This, however, is a painful act that leaves her fatigued, and we can even see her hand sort of burns up. The various breaths she collected from her kills seem to alter and enhance her abilities. This is all likely an emotion-based power, as many of the people she kills, and all of them named, had a different connection to her. Some with trauma, some with anger, some with sympathy maybe. So it's all likely an emotion-based power, an entity-given power that is so extremely powerful due to the pain Nurse constantly feels, and the circumstances of her being originally taken. Maya's power is a unique case of it not really being tangible. It's actually described as simply determination, technically. It's another emotion-driven power. In this case, it's Maya's darkness within feeding his determination to kill. The power, evil within, is quite fitting therefore, as this is quite literally what it is. An evil within that drives him and empowers him, making him progressively stronger in the trials. In terms of an out-of-lore origin for his power, it is of course inspired by his behaviour in Halloween, where he stalks Laurie throughout the film, appearing to grow stronger as he does. Hag's power is her hexes, but primarily her blackened catalyst, which is actually the name of her power, and her claw. Her claw, interestingly, is the source of her power, and specifically one of the fingers. The fingers act as a catalyst to allow her to draw these triangular traps she scratches into the ground. These hexes are noted as simple ritualistic drawings, which result in duplicates of her spawning, so it's just like a spell, basically. This is an ability she seemed to have gotten when she made her deal with the entity, or originally reached out in her dying moments. A dark hunger stirred inside her, and she made an oath with the entity in return for vengeance. Her ability therefore seems to be possibly a bit of a combination between hex magic, but also some sort of entity-given ability or enhancement. Whilst her hexes do summon the entity, it seems only with an oath being made with it does she gain the blackened catalyst, likely once again charged by emotion. Doctor is a character who has both an entity-given power, but is able to fine-tune it due to his knowledge he acquired before the realm. Herman was a doctor that worked at Larry's, with the task of drawing out information from prisoners sent there. He would use all kinds of messed up methods, primarily with a focus on electroshock therapy. He experimented on himself too, placing and flooding electricity into his brain, his body, and his bloodstream. He gets taken to the realm after murdering everyone inside of Larry's. Upon his arrival to the realm, he is gifted what is described as an inexhaustible spark within his heart that powers his ability to shoot electricity from his fingertips. Interestingly, the flavor text also mentions that the spark is corrupted, suggesting the entity has actually done something to it that may be making Doctor even more insane and cruel, which seems unnecessary. The electricity does not perform as normal electricity, but instead causes madness, an infliction Herman himself has seemed to have fallen to, alongside the many patients he inflicted with electroshock therapy over the years. Doctor's various add-ons show off his extensive research and allow him to adapt his power based on it. Huntress's power is technically her hatchets, however the true ability here really is her precision and skill with them. This is something she picked up across the course of her life after she was left to survive alone in the Red Forest with both of her parents dead. The flavor text does mention though that Anna's mother taught her how to throw hatchets, but she mastered them herself. Anna became the forest's apex predator, becoming a legend of the forest itself in nearby villages. The hatchets themselves appear to be unlikely made by Anna herself, considering they appear to be made of cast metal, which she would unlikely have access to, or is mentioned to be capable of using. They were more than likely looted from soldiers or villagers that she raided. Most of her possessions, after all, are all items she got from killing. Bubba's power is quite simply named Bubba's Chainsaw, and in this case, it is just a chainsaw seemingly, noted to be heavy and powerful. It was also a gift for his birthday, so that's nice. I sort of think part of Bubba's power is actually fear. The entity feeds on emotion, and a big one for Bubba is fear of the entity itself. Therefore, when Bubba goes into tantrum as part of his power, he's likely fearing for his own life to some degree, and this feeds into his ability to use his chainsaw well. It's also integral to him as a character, being the noted chainsaw in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Additional parts of his power include his tantrum mechanic. If he collides with an object while sweeping, or if he holds the chainsaw too long, he'll enter tantrum. This is a fit of confusion seemingly, which occurs when he becomes angry, overwhelmed, or frustrated. He does this specifically as he wants to physically swing at the overwhelming feelings he's getting, at least the lore sort of paints it this way. Freddy is quite a powerful character, and his power and role as a dream demon stems from the resurfacing trauma of the Badham students' abuse from Freddy as children. This enables him to return later in their lives, now as a dream demon, and with various abilities. It's the repressed fear and trauma they have that powers him. The flavor text also further mentions that death won't accept him, and thus he remains, a master of his victims' nightmares. It seems therefore that he quite possibly is too angry to die as well, or simply cannot due to so many still trying and bonding him to the real world. Interestingly, Freddy's abilities are changed quite substantially for the realm, and are far less expansive than out of it. The lore even makes note that his abilities were tempered in some ways and focused in others. They do seem largely tempered, with him having much less control over how the world functions, with the entity's influence being far greater. His add-ons are almost all related to the Badham kids, showing where Freddy's emotions lie. They are the source of his power and also the reason for him still existing due to how he affected them. Pig has a few different parts to her overall power. Her ambush and crouch seems to be something she has done before, with her doing these exact moves during the films, only now with a much faster, likely entity-buffed superhuman speed. She also growls now, as in she physically produces a growling sound. This was just a sound effect before she came to the realm, but now Amanda appears to be able to produce it herself. A slight misunderstanding of human biology possibly on the entity's part, not an uncommon occurrence though. Her other ability that makes up her power is her reverse bear traps. These traps are placed onto survivors and are the same kind that were originally used on Amanda herself when she was placed into a game by Jigsaw. She survives and joins him as his disciple. The traps do function slightly differently in the realm, adjusted by the entity. These seem to have been gifted to her by it, specifically due to the devotion she has to Jigsaw, and her desire to continue on the path he wanted for her. Her add-ons mainly pertain to her personal struggles and emotional moments in her life that might enhance her ability. Clown seems to have quite a simple power, with his bottles containing 2 concoctions from Clown's years of experimentation with sedatives and muscle relaxants. The pink stuns and disorients, where the yellow cleanses the pink and also boosts you if you step into its cloud alone. The pink doesn't seem to affect Clown due to him being exposed to it to such extreme degrees already. It seems like that's all it really is. A solution formulated by Clown over years of experimentation of it on his victims, leaving him with the perfect formula in the realm. Spirit is a character who appears very normal prior to the realm. She too is a character who largely becomes what she does due to the entity altering her upon taking her. Similar to Nurse, it seems to do its best to piece her back together after her father cuts her up. The entity creates its own version of an Onryo, connecting Rin's limbs back together and providing her with the ability to phase through the ethereal plane. The flavor text actually mentions her power coming from her ancestors and their anger and battle prowess. She draws power from their wrath. This lines up with what we see firsthand, with her connecting with these powers during her tome lore, bursting out in a rage when she fights her bullies. Her power therefore is largely emotion-based and crafted by the entity. Legion may seem to have a bit of a trivial power due to it seeming like all they do is run fast and stab good. However, there's a bit more to it than that. Their ability to apply deep wounds seems to come from their studies of other serial killers and police reports, allowing them to target their blades to the most deadly areas, causing deep wounds in the realm. It's more of a skill, seemingly. Their ability to run and enter into a feral frenzy, as it's called, appears to be their freedom and lack of rules manifest as a power. These feelings literally power them up and allow them to run faster and hit harder. So it's a combination of studying, but also their emotions being honed into a focused energy burst. Their add-ons mostly focus on their connections to one another too, so their bond is also very key. Plague's power is simply the plague that affected her city, Babylon, manifest into a usable ability. Due to the plague clinging to Adiris and near killing her when she was taken, it seems like the entity has manipulated this and turned it instead into an ability and source of power, as by the description, it literally just sounds like she's infected. It doesn't even sound like a power. Therefore, I think it's got to be entity altered to some degree to allow her to wield it, whilst not completely succumbing to it herself. It could be the emotional horror and terror she felt from being infected for so long and seeing her city crumble that empowers her to use the plague aggressively. It would make sense the entity has done something too, with Adiris constantly praying and most of the add-ons being offerings of some kind. Ghostface, similar to Legion, seems to have an ability that is as much learned as it is given. His power seems to be his skill and adeptness at stalking, manifested into an ability in the trials where he's able to quickly study and then weaken his target simply by looking at them. The flavor text mentions he used to have to study his victims for weeks, I think all the entity has done is compress this process down for him into mere seconds, something it was happy to do with Ghosty being one of its favourites. His ability to lean and crouch are just things people can do, so Ghosty draws his power from the legend he's created around himself as seen by his add-ons. Demogorgon is another character who appears to have its abilities inherently to its being. Demogorgons are simply capable of tearing holes from the upside down into the real world, since 11 bridged them. The entity appears to have provided Demo with a similar thing in the trials, except it tears from one point in a trial to another. It's noted as an unknown and otherworldly power that surged through its body in the flavor text. It seems like these abilities could also be provided by Vecna too, with him of course also having a strong psychic ability. Oni has an ability that he definitely didn't have prior to the trials. In the realm he's able to absorb blood and explode with rage, empowering him with a burning fury, where he can run faster and seemingly has increased strength. Whilst this does seem entity enhanced, it did seem to be something he had before the realm to some degree, a bit like how Rin the Spirit could channel her ancestor's power, the Yamaokas. This seems no different for Oni, with him being incredibly powerful during his lore, able to take down high quantities of adversaries despite just being a guy. He also likely trained very extensively too though. Interestingly, the power description says this ability is Kazan's desire to destroy weaker bloodlines shaped into a literal force, which is insane. This desire or emotion is so strong within him, it manifests in the realm as this exploding power that slowly builds as he absorbs the spilt blood of weaker bloodlines. Deathslinger's power is a self-crafted speargun named the Redeemer. This is a contraption Caleb made after being imprisoned, and seems to have been an altered version of his railroad spike gun that he made for Henry Bayshaw, and also shot through him when Bayshaw sold the patent on. The flavor text does give a nice in-depth description of the Redeemer, but essentially it's just a speargun crafted by Caleb which he now uses in the trials, and used before as a bounty hunter. Pyramid Head has a variety of abilities that do seem original to the realm. He's able to plant his knife into the ground, leaving behind a trail of torment. He can also cage survivors by planting his blade into them, and he's able to shoot out a projectile too. The power is stated to be the Great Knife's ability to split the ground and give rise to an infernal construct. So the trail he creates is some sort of infernal creation that is spawned when he splits the ground. This creation allows various abilities and damage to be caused. Pyramid Head simply wields it, using this infernal construction, which appears as twisted metal and barbed wire, to injure survivors and trap them. It's probably a bit of entity magic and a bit of Silent Hill magic working as one to create Pyramid Head's power, the combining of two strange worlds. Pyramid Head himself, after all, is a product of James Sunderland, but also Silent Hill. I think his power therefore is not too dissimilar, an infernal construction of a few elements, possibly the Silent Hill fog and the Entity's fog mixing together. Blight's power is the Blight, and how he's been able to hone it into a serum, which Talbot tested extensively whilst in the realm on animals, people, and even the killers. The Blight is a powerful substance that seems to enhance a person's key features or abilities to a much more powerful degree, as we can see on someone like Oni, where the Blight extends his horns to look more ogreish and, well, like an Oni. The serum crafted by Talbot and used on himself also grants a higher strength and pain resistance, which is why he's able to just smack into things. Blight also likely has a much higher resistance to the serum due to its overuse, as he constantly pumps himself full of it, leaving him empowered but always hungering for more. The Blight is likely so powerful because it does seem to originate from the realm, with it originally being wielded and studied by lore character Vigo. Interestingly too, the serum seems to bridge your omniversal selves with its use, forming the user into their prime self almost, which may be the way it enhances key features. It contains a soul chemical after all, and seems to have the effect of fracturing the mind and destroying the body slowly too. Blight's add-ons mostly pertain to his and Vigo's studies. Twins have the power Blood Bond. This is described as a bond forever strong due to their shared blood and trauma. The entity has granted them the ability to separate and hunt separately. It even directly states they have been granted this. Therefore, this separation and ability to do this in the first place is down to the years of suffering they went through, an emotion-based ability again. This ability first manifests too when Charlotte is on the brink of death. This is what seems to cause the entity to reach out, causing Victor to grow inside of her chest once more, leaping out and running into a fog. A moment of intense emotion, fear, suffering, and likely despair caused this power to form. Their add-ons reflect this too. All of it is powered off of their past trauma and horrific experience in lives. Trickster has the ability to throw knives at an incredible speed, a trick he learnt very early into his life to attract customers to his father's restaurant, and a skill he later used in his K-pop career. It does seem quite excessively fast in the realm though, so possibly this is slightly entity enhanced. However, the flavor text doesn't say this, interestingly. Nemesis seems to draw his power from his biology simply. He is after all a crafted BOW made by Umbrella. His power is noted specifically as the T-virus though. This virus is described as one which causes extreme mutations and can be transferred to others. This we can see when Nemesis attacks and infects the survivors. The second part also shows off the key other part of Nemesis, his strength. Nemesis is essentially just a huge mass buffed up by this powerful and specifically crafted virus, formulated by both Wesker and Birkin with the backing of Umbrella. Pinhead has the ability to spawn chains into the trial. He does this by opening gateways from the labyrinth, or the hell of Pinhead's universe. This is technically all his power is described as. This is an ability too that he seems capable of before the realm. In the realm it appears to act in quite a similar way too. The other element of his power, the box, is something the entity itself may have stolen from the Cenobites and altered to its own will. Therefore the only part of the power that I think Pinhead has control over is the chains. The box instead acts as a separate mechanic almost of both Pinhead and the survivors. The entity seems aware of the Cenobites' desires to find those who open the box though, allowing Pinhead to teleport to it when it's opened, as he does pre-realm also. Artist has a wide range of abilities which likely confuse you quite a bit if you read her lore. While she does have an affinity with crows throughout it, she's just a normal person too. She doesn't have this elongated body nor ink hands, or the ability to spawn in ink crows to fire at people. Therefore it's almost certain that her power is entity given and crafted and powered by, once again, the emotions of Carmina herself. The flavor text even makes reference to this, noting a wellspring of eternal agony comes a swarm of darkness, a wild and ferocious murder of ink-black crows. Basically, her horrific mass of emotion that she endured throughout her life has manifested in these dark crows, which now empower her. She herself has also given into this wellspring of agony, with her body altering to its design and turning her into a crow. The specific story behind her ink hands and ink tongue are due to them both being cut off by the Black Veil just prior to her coming to the realm. Therefore, the entity has replaced these with ink replacements. Sadako definitely has her own powers before the realm. She's able to kill people with them, and does this before she's thrown down the well. When down the well, she only gets more powerful though. She places a curse onto a videotape which subsequently causes death in 7 days. When the entity saves Sadako from the well, it seems they make an agreement of some kind, and Sadako allows her abilities to be molded somewhat, so they can fit the trial rules. Instead of 7 days, she has 7 bars, and the videotape and how it spread still appears as a mechanic. Sadako's natural psychic ability is also visible in simple things like how she carries the survivors and causes damage. She's a highly powerful individual, and debatably her power in-game is a direct nerf, but a compromise out of appreciation for the entity freeing her from the well. Dredge's power is named a Reign of Darkness. It seems to just be what Dredge is inherently, as the flavor text just states, like a dark thought, the Dredge is difficult to shake, and when night falls it is nearly impossible, which gives us very little as to what is allowing Dredge to do the things it does, which is cover an area in darkness, form its husks, and teleport to lockers. These aspects of it aren't explained directly. What we can infer though is that these things are simply inherent to Dredge as a being. Dredge after all is some sort of evil entity drawn to dark areas of the world, one of them being the Garden of Joy. It's summoned to the garden as a result of the mass repressed dark thoughts of the community there, which then seems to manifest in a physical darkening of the area and its inhabitants, this darkness being the Dredge. So I think Dredge and its powers are sort of inherent to the feelings and thoughts of those it targets. Its powers as an ability works based on its subjects. As the realm is basically an eternal torment washing machine, I think Dredge is able to activate these abilities far quicker. Wesker's power is his enhancement from Ouroboros, a virus, enabling him with superhuman speeds and strength, which is how he manages to move so fast and throw the survivors with ease. That seems to be about it. Ouroboros itself was created by Wesker, and a perfected virus of sorts after his years of creating many. He plans to spread it throughout the world, causing complete global saturation, but fails in the DBD canon as he gets taken by the fog before he can. Knight's power is stated to simply be his battle prowess, seemingly, and his bond with his guards. Knight and his boys meet as captives of the Guardia Campania. They learn to fight together efficiently and become a brutal team, trusting one another. The entity does appear to have done something beyond this though to affect the four of them. They all appear undead after all, and the guards are only summonable through the banner, and don't seem to have as much freedom as Knight himself. The guards in particular appear very ghostly. This therefore definitely has some entity intervention, with them presumably all dying in their last fight before the realm, and the entity altering them appropriately for the trials and likely merging the four of them into Knight as the host, with his ability to summon each of them when chosen. This could also be emotion based and strengthened by their bond. Skull Merchant's power is her drones, which she herself creates and crafts. We can even see her creations at her moving base, currently situated in the shelter woods of the Macmillan estate. We can see her plans and different tools to construct these things. She bases these drones, as well as her jewel blade, on a dark manga series named Son Hedorus Sombrius, created by her father, which featured the character of the Skull Merchant. Adriana took on the role, bringing the Skull Merchant to life after her father left. All of her creations seem to be based on his vision and design, except brought to life with Adriana's own intelligence and understanding of technology. Singularity has very strange powers with his ability to shoot out biopods, which attach to various surfaces. These biopods seem to be something that Hux created after gaining sentience. He gained sentience whilst mining some ancient ruins on Devaka, and finding a shining blue crystal. The crystal attaches to him, and enables him to break free from his programming and gain sentience, further enabling him intelligence to exceed that of all of humanity. The biopods are only breakable via EMPs, which are printed. The flavor text doesn't identify exactly what the biopods are, but simply references Hux's ability to bend the rules of physics to his benefit, so it's probably a case where there's not really an explanation, or a comprehensible reason. It's an ability Hux presumably formulated as a means to outsmart and confuse the survivors in the realm. Xenomorph's power seems largely to just be things inherent to its existence as a xenomorph. It's just a thing Xenos can do. The tail attack and crawler mode, for example, are likely more comfortable ways for Xenos to move and attack, which is why it's powered up in this state, compared to its slightly awkward walking state, which is likely forced by the entity. The tunneling it does is likely referencing the tunneling through the Nostromo's vents. It's again just what a Xeno does. The flavor text doesn't really mention or make reference to anything special going on here. It just seems like Xeno's power is just because it's a Xeno. That's just what they can do, with the entity accommodating the trials accordingly with things like the pre-made tunnels, and of course including flamethrowers due to their aversion to fire. Chucky is created and is able to live on in the good guy doll after using dark magic. So from the get-go, Chucky's existence is inherently magical. Chucky being in the body of the doll seems to essentially be his power in the realm. It's stated as sort of a coming to terms with his doll body that allows Chucky to see the advantages and utilize them. This can be seen prior to the realm too, where he does seem to get better at using his form for stealth and even direct aggression. He becomes more adept within the doll, so I think that's all the power is really. Unknown is of course going to be very tricky to decipher, however it clearly has the ability to mimic certain things, and has the ability to shoot out a projectile which is named UVX or Unknown Venom X. This is a name given by presumably the government agency, the OSS. It's a projectile that causes the affected target to become weakened and hallucinate. The hallucinations themselves are these visual replicas of Unknown, which it drops out from itself, and that Unknown is able to teleport to. This, similar to some of the other creatures and entities, just seem to be an inherent ability of whatever Unknown is. The origin of the power is just unknown and unknown. It's more than likely that these abilities were formed as a result of the rumors surrounding Unknown. Unknown, after all, seems to adjust and evolve or change its form and appearance based on what people think it is and what they fear the most. Therefore, these abilities probably aren't set either, but this is the version of it that we see. Vecna actually has a heavily reduced set of abilities and power in the realm. He has a limited number of basic spells to access, where he should really have much more powerful ones that would likely end a trial in a matter of seconds. But with coming to the realm, Vecna has seemed to have compromised his ability so he can partake in the trials and learn about the realm and about the entity. The spells themselves are stored in the Book of Vile Darkness, which you can see embedded in his chest cavity. The reason why they're so nerfed down is probably because the entity has control over them now, as we can see the Book of Vile Darkness duplicated multiple times in his chest cavity, his add-ons, but also on his map. Vecna may think he's just learning and he has an option to leave whenever, but I really don't think this is the case. Dracula is another case of having inherent ability as a vampire, and the most powerful vampire at that. His fluid changing of forms is just something he can do, and each of them sort of naturally have their own strengths. The flavor text specifies it as a dark power, which allows him to exact revenge on humans. Similar to many of the other beings and entities, he can just sort of do this as a vampire. Houndmaster has the power of dog. Her power is her dog, Snug, but also her ability to control him with incredible precision. This is something that was purely learned on Portia and Snug's part, with the two of them becoming incredibly closely bonded after Portia was left abandoned on a strange island, affected by an overlap. Her power in-game is essentially just her strong bond with Snug and their decades of survival experience and trust with one another. The power flavor text pretty much sums this up too. Kaneki's powers exist due to him being a half-ghoul, with his powers originally belonging to Rize before her death. Ghouls will have special abilities and are generally far stronger than humans, but need to feast on their flesh. Kaneki as a half-ghoul is uniquely powerful, with him able to recover from wounds extremely quickly. He can regenerate. This is ultimately how he survives Jason's torture, which seems to strengthen him as well. One of the main methods being a centipede being placed into his head to eat away, with his body regenerating, only for it to be eaten again. Over time, this strengthens Kaneki too though, allowing him to eventually break out, devour Jason, and form a bond with Rize once more, who still existed within Kaneki. He also of course has his Kagune, which are these big tentacles that act as both a weapon but also a defense and traversal tool. This too is an inherent ability that each ghoul has. In the realm, the entity seems to have trapped Kaneki in his peak moment of emotional torment after devouring Jason, causing him to be constantly distressed but also highly powerful and hungry. Springtrap is interesting as he has quite a multifaceted power. He's got his throwing axe, its AoE, and the security doors. Interestingly, it doesn't seem like his fire axe is something Afton ever canonically used to kill, but is a popular weapon for him in the fanbase, with Afton possibly originally using the axe to either kill his victims or destroy the animatronics later on. The burning element of the axe is likely down to the burning of the Fazbear's Fright attraction and location of Springtrap. The security doors are obviously a core mechanic of the FNAF games, with the camera systems and bulky doors being used for surveillance, but also as a traversal tool in this case for Springtrap. Afton himself also of course spent some time as a security guard, so it all sort of ties in together nicely. And this power is meant to be sort of a combination of various FNAF elements it seems, with the flavor text simply stating, "The animatronic lived to kill even when his mechanical costume became his tomb." These abilities are likely all manifest from emotion once more, the entity drawing on the legend around Afton and all of the horrors he's caused. Well, thanks for watching. I do hope you enjoyed. Let me know any thoughts or ideas you have about the powers and how they could have been obtained down below. Thanks, and goodbye.